Welcome viewers to Bodhi Unified Flow. Here, we simplify complexity and amplify performance. Today, we are diving into part 5 of our explainer on the foundations of behavioral change, specifically looking at the neuroscience of goal setting. We're going to explore milestones, neural feedback, and a fascinating concept called Mudita, or rejoicing, to reinforce our progress. We are literally going to bridge the biological hardware of your brain's reward system with the contemplative software of sustained joy. Let's get right into it. Here is a quick look at our agenda. We'll start with our objectives, unpack the biological engine of motivation, and then look at the 85% rule. After that, we'll introduce the neuroscience of Mudita, practical application through the HEAL protocol, and finally wrap up with a summary and our references. Section 1. Introduction and objectives. Let's set our intention. By the end of our time together, you're going to walk away with a clear, actionable toolkit to sustainably rewire your brain for success, totally avoiding that dreaded dopamine burnout. You'll understand exactly how the reward prediction error works, you'll know how to calibrate your task difficulty perfectly using the 85% rule, and you'll discover how to deploy the ancient practice of Mudita alongside the modern HEAL protocol. This is all about hardwiring progress directly into your neural circuitry. Moving on to Section 2, the biological engine of motivation. Time to look under the hood. So why do we often lose our drive halfway through a big project? Well, to understand how to sustain change, we have to talk about dopamine. Now, a lot of people think dopamine is just the pleasure chemical, but it's actually not. It is a molecule of seeking. It's driven by the surprise of a reward. The absolute biggest driver of learning and persistence is a mechanism neuroscientists call the reward prediction error, or RPE. Basically, your dopamine neurons fire based on the difference between what you expected to happen and what actually happened. Think of it like this. Imagine you're expecting a $100 bonus at work, but you unexpectedly get a $500 bonus. That element of surprise, that is exactly what spikes your dopamine and fuels your drive to keep pushing forward. This really beautifully illustrates the whole dynamic. When the outcome is better than you expected, a positive RPE, you get a rapid phasic dopamine spike. You feel high excitement and your brain enters a prime state for learning. But, and this is crucial, watch out for the zero RPE. When you get exactly what you expected, your brain just maintains a baseline firing rate. Your motivation actually starts to decline. We call this the clarity paradox. If a reward is fully expected, dopamine drops and you lose your drive even when you're technically succeeding. And of course, a negative RPE, getting less than expected, causes a dopamine dip, which inevitably leads to burnout. Section 3. Milestones and the 85% rule. Let's figure out how to avoid that zero RPE. To keep from hitting that flat line where our motivation just fizzles out, we have to strategically design our journey. Relying on a distant, far-off goal will just leave you neurochemically depleted. This brings us to a really fascinating number, 85%. According to research published in Nature Communications, the absolute most efficient rate of progress happens when a task is just difficult enough that you succeed exactly 85% of the time and you fail 15% of the time. You see that 15% failure rate? That's a feature, not a bug. Failing 15% of the time triggers this state of mild frustration. It recruits your autonomic nervous system, creating what we call error-induced alertness. This state releases acetylcholine, a neurochemical that basically commands your brain to be highly alert and ready to wire in new learning. If your goal is too easy and you're succeeding 100% of the time, your reward system just habituates and your motivation collapses. If it's too hard, those constant negative RPEs make you want to quit. 85% is the absolute neurobiological sweet spot. So here is the million-dollar question. How do we actively keep that dopamine flowing steadily when the actual finish line might be months or even years away? How do we continually generate our own positive prediction errors so we don't fall victim to the clarity paradox? Section 4. The neuroscience of Mudita. Time to install the software for change. This is where we bring in the software to upgrade our biological hardware. It's a profound contemplative technology known as Mudita. In Buddhist psychology, specifically detailed in a text called the Visuddhimagga, Mudita translates to sympathetic or altruistic joy. It's the deliberate practice of genuinely rejoicing in the success of others, and crucially for our purposes, taking the time to intentionally rejoice in your own milestones. From a neurological perspective, this isn't just a nice, warm, philosophical idea. It is a highly tactical tool. It's a method for self-reinforcement to manually generate those positive dopamine spikes we so desperately need to keep going. The biological contrast here is just staggering. Traditionally, mudita is used as the antidote to envy. When we feel envy, neuroscience shows it activates the anterior cingulate cortex. Believe it or not, that is the exact same brain region associated with physical pain. Envy releases cortisol, creates chronic stress, and narrows our focus down to basic survival. But mudita, the active practice of rejoicing, activates the ventral striatum and the nucleus accumbens. It literally hijacks your brain's primary reward centers to release dopamine. It reduces stress and builds pro-social long-term persistence. You're swapping pain for sustainable fuel. Section 5. The HEAL Protocol. Let's talk about hardwiring that joy. So how do we apply this? Because feeling a quick, fleeting burst of joy isn't enough. We need to make it a permanent part of our operating system. The neuropsychologist Rick Hansen famously points out that the human brain is naturally like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. To flip that script, we use the HEAL method. HEAL. First, have a positive experience. Just notice a small milestone. Second, enrich it. This is vital. Stay with that feeling of joy for about 15 to 30 seconds. Really feel it in your body. Third, absorb it. Visualize that positive feeling sinking into your brain like water soaking into a sponge. And finally, link it. Hold on to that positive feeling while briefly acknowledging a past struggle. This literally rewires and reframes your old memories. Now, why is this mindful savoring so absolutely crucial right now? Well, constant exposure to the digital dopamine loops of social media creates this state of digital hypervigilance. It artificially spikes our baseline dopamine and elevates our cortisol levels. If you've ever felt like sitting down and doing the actual effortful work toward your goals is just impossibly tedious, well, this is exactly why. Mindful savoring, practicing mudita on your real-world milestones, is the ultimate antidote to that modern fatigue. It allows your dopamine receptors to actually recover their sensitivity, and it degrades the chronic stress caused by all this digital overstimulation. Section 6. Summary and references. Let's review the key insights we've uncovered. We've seen today that creating lasting change isn't about white-knuckling it with brute willpower. It is about the strategic alignment of milestones and the deliberate, conscious cultivation of joy. Remember, the reward prediction error is what truly drives our motivation through the power of surprise. Operating at an 85% success rate keeps our brains highly alert with acetylcholine. Mudita allows us to safely hack our own reward centers, flipping the switch from stress to joy. And the HEAL protocol lets us take those fleeting moments of progress and hardwire them into permanent behavioral traits. Just look at what we've covered in this explainer. You now possess the neurocognitive tools to map out your journey and sustain your willpower. You understand the underlying biology of your motivation. You know how to perfectly calibrate your learning curve. You can use rejoicing as a literal, practical neurofeedback mechanism, and you know how to install those positive traits permanently using the HEAL method. I want to leave you with this provocative thought to make sure you start building these new neural pathways right away. Think about your current goals for a second. What small milestone will you actively use the HEAL protocol on today? How are you going to use Mudita to shift your brain from the heavy friction of effort into the sustained joy of progress? Thank you for joining us at Bodhi Unified Flow, where we simplify complexity and amplify performance. For your continued mastery, our references for today's session include episode 55 of the Huberman Lab, the Visuddhimagga on Buddhist psychology, Rick Hansen's research on positive neuroplasticity, the 85% Rule study published in Nature Communications, and the work of Dr. Maya Shankar. Until next time, keep optimizing your brain and remember to actually rejoice in your progress.